This will be a practice test now on Chapter 5. This deals with algebraic equations. So there is our equation, and we want to isolate the z in this equation. So let me write it a little bigger. The strategy would be to get rid of this number on this side of the equation by adding its opposite. So if we add it to this side, we must add it to this side. So now we have a negative 4.4 z. This just cancels out. And here we have 13.2. Now to isolate the z, we need to divide both sides by the coefficient of z, which is a negative 4.4. Divide this side by a negative 4.4. And z then, because this just becomes a positive 1, is equal to a negative 3. And that's what we have for our answer. Now, what I've done here, writing the equation down, showing the steps, this process, this work is solving an equation where we're keeping equals on both sides until eventually we get a 1z that we don't write the 1, and it equals a negative 3. And you're careful of the signs. In example 2, as we look at it, I've written it larger. Again, we want to isolate the t. So what would we add to a negative 12 to make it 0? Well, a positive 12 to both sides. So we then get t equals 22. So this was a rather easy one. Now here we have a word problem. We want to translate what is written here into algebra. The cost of renting a car for 1 day and driving m miles, if the rate is 47 per day, plus, that's dollars, 35 cents per mile. Well, let's do the miles first. So this will be 35 cents. That's critical. Number of miles plus the cost of renting the car each day. Now this is in dollars. And that's what we have. Now, for something like this, they're giving you, in English, a word problem where they want you to read it, and then the easy part of this is that they've given you what it would look like in an algebraic equation. So they want you to solve for the letter x. So for this, it would be x, and then 2 times 40 is 80. See, I'm simplifying. And that equals 103. So to solve this, then, you would subtract 80 from both sides, and you get x equals 23. And that's what we have. In this example, we want to do some substitution. So where we have an x, we're going to put a -2. Keeping in mind there's a -5, and y is going to be 3, and that is a -9. So we've substituted our values for the letter. And what do we do first? Well, we do this multiplication first, which results in a -15. We still have our -2 and our -9. And since they're all negative, we just add them all up. And the answer is -26. You have to be careful about this part. Here we're asked to combine like or similar terms, but first we have to get rid of the parentheses. So we'll use that distribution principle. This will become 15y plus 10, 5 times 2, and then there's a plus 1y. Now notice they don't write the 1. That's by convention. But for calculations, if you want to do that, that's fine. So we have 15 y's and 1 y give us 16 y's plus 10. Now there are some easy ones, but if you're not careful, you could make an error. Write and do not simplify. The sum of 5, so 5, the sum of x, so we're going to add an x, and we're going to add a y. And that's how you would show it. In this next example, we're asked to collect terms and then solve. So here we have a -12 and an 8. This will give us a -4. A 6v minus 4v gives us a 2v. And now to solve for v by itself, we divide both sides by the coefficient of v, which is 2. Here this becomes a positive 1. V equals a -2. Another easy one, 7z equals a -2.1. We're going to divide both sides by the numerical coefficient of z. Z equals a -0.3. And again, you can check your work using your calculator, but 7 goes into 21 3 times, so a 2.1 is 0.3. Now, this problem comes in a number of steps. Here we're looking for perimeter. The perimeter is 40 feet, and the length is 8 feet. And we can label this a little bit. So this is going to be 8. We don't know our W, so that's what we want to solve for. The first thing we have to do is pick out which formula is perimeter. And since I have these done, I have it listed here. And by the way, you might wonder, what are all these formulas? Just as review. This one is circumference of a circle. This is perimeter of a triangle. This is temperature, Celsius and Fahrenheit, showing the relationship to each. This is the formula of a trapezoid, which we often see. This is perimeter of a square where all the sides are the same. This is area of a rectangle or a parallelogram, primarily a parallelogram. This is perimeter of a rectangle, and this is interest formula. Now, we've picked out the right formula. On our next slide, they're going to ask solve for the unknown item, which is width, but don't do any substitution. So here's how we do that. Perimeter equals 2 lengths plus 2 widths. Now we want to isolate the width. So we said another technique is just move a term to the other side. Perimeter, change its sign, minus 2L. Transposing the 2L to the other side just changes its sign, equals 2W. So when you go to solve this, you're just going to divide this side by its coefficient of 2, and this by the coefficient of 2. So here the 2's cancel out, and W then equals this. Now, in the next step, they want you to do the substitution. So here our perimeter, we said, was 40, minus 2. Our length, we said, was 8. And this is all going to be divided by 2. And this will give us our width. So, negative 2 times 8 is 16. 16 from 40 is 24. Divided by 2, our width will be 12. So what I did is I put all of the steps on one slide here. Again, you had to pick out the formula first, solve for the unknown letter W, and then substitute your values into this and get a value for W. Now on this test we had a perimeter formula, but suppose we had a trapezoid, and this is the formula for a trapezoid, and we're asked to solve for the letter H. Well, all of this on one side is one term, so to get rid of fractions, we're going to multiply each term by the lowest common denominator, which is 2. So here the 2's cancel out, and I will just erase them to save a little room here. So now we want to solve for H. So what we would do is we would divide both sides by what's in parentheses here, B plus C. You could put that in parentheses or not, and then this side, B plus C. So these cancel out, and it's H equals this. And there's one other I'd do for you. So in this case, we want to solve for F. Well, I'll change colors here. We're going to get rid of this fraction to isolate what's on this side by multiplying this by its reciprocal, 9/5. So this side by 9/5. So here all of this cancels out, and we get then 9/5 C equals F minus 32. Now to isolate the f, we take this term, transpose it to this side, where it becomes a positive 32. And now I can erase this here. And there's our solution. So these are the ones we often deal with. And on other tests, I have found these to be the examples they're using. So there's the next slide with the solution. And there's what W equals. All right, let's go on. Now here, a person is texting, and they're saying the plan costs $8 for the first 550 messages, and then 15 cents for each additional message. If she owes the company this much, how many messages did she send for the month? Now, when I checked the blue sheets, I found, I was giving partial credit for this because students didn't answer this question here. But let's go on. If we get 550 messages for $8, we know that $8 worth is 550 messages. So there's 60 cents extra here. So 0.60. How many messages did she get for that? Well, you divide the 0.60 by 0.15, and you get that she has 4 messages. So the total number of messages would be 554. And we didn't use algebra particularly for this. You probably could fit it in there somewhere, but check it out. Now, what some students did is they would put 4 messages, but that's not what they're asking here. How many additional messages? They're saying how many messages were sent that month. So you have to answer. So when I looked at it and I saw they had 4, I was able to give them partial credit. Okay, here we have a rectangular fenced-in pasture whose width must be 70 yards. And what would the length be? Well, they're giving you, again, the equation here. So we're going to get 2L. Now, 2 times 70 is 140, and that equals the perimeter of 600. We subtract 140 from that, and we get 460. And then we divide both sides by 2, and we get 230 is our length. Now, for something like this is just a vocabulary check. Here we have 2 terms. Remember, terms are separated by either a positive or a negative. And they're asking, indicate whether the term is a variable or a constant. Well, the one that they're asking us is the first term here. that is a variable. So we click variable, negative 2t. The variable part is the letter, and the coefficient is the number. Hopefully that's an easy one, but some were getting that a tad confused. Now the second term is also a variable, 2a. The variable part is a, and the coefficient is 2. Now here we're asked to combine like terms. Now, where this ought to be easy, some don't get this correct. And we have suggested you take your like terms, like 5y squared, a negative 4a, and then just a plain 4, and then you match these like terms up. So negative 4a would go in this column also. This negative 3 goes in this column, and this negative 4y squared goes in this column. So as you add them up, you get here a 1y squared. Remember, you're not going to write the 1. This is a negative 8a, and this is a negative 7. Now, notice I have them a little bit out of order here, but MATLAB should accept this, and we don't write the 1. If you put the 1 there, they're going to take off for that. Now, here we have an average problem where we're trying to find out what would be the average time she would have to do to have an overall goal of 60. So let me set this up for you. So what I've done, I've listed the minutes of the 5 rides she had already, and then I'm using X to indicate the amount of that 6th ride that we don't know. So to find the average, we have to add all of these up and divide by 6. But I could also get rid of this fraction here. Remember, this is all one amount here, by multiplying both sides of the equation by 6. So here now that 6 cancels out, and here this 6 times 60 is 360. So when I add this up then, I get 306 plus x, and then to solve it I just subtract 306 from both sides, and I get x equals 54. And that's my answer, and this is how it's done. Here's another equation, 6x plus 14 equals 2x minus 6. Well, we've introduced now this concept of transposition, where we can take a term from one side, bring it over to the other. It just changes its sign. So on this side it's going to be a negative 2x, so this becomes 4x. Transpose that to this side, it becomes a negative 14, and a negative 6 gives me a negative 20. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. I get x equals a negative 5. Translate into an algebraic expression. Do not simplify. The cost of purchasing a football helmet and jersey, if the helmet cost $4 less than twice the cost of the jersey. Now, for this one, I would have used J for the cost of the jersey, but they want us to use X for the cost of the jersey, so that's okay. This is the cost of the jersey, so the helmet cost twice the cost of the jersey, less $4. So this is the cost of the jersey. This is the cost of the helmet. And that's what we have here. Again, a lot of you, when I checked Blue Sheets, was just listing this part and you forgot to put the jersey there. And we're almost finished. Here, a TV show relies on people across the country to submit their videos to be used in the latest episode. If a total of 43 videos is required for an episode, and 10 videos have already been chosen, how many videos are needed to complete the episode? And they're giving us the formula. So this one we can almost do mentally. We're just going to subtract 10 for both sides, and we get X equals 33. All right, here's our last example. And they're asking us to distribute and then combine like terms. So 4 times X is 4X. 4 times 3 is 12. And remember, we have one more X. We don't usually write that one. So 1X and 4X is 5X plus 12. All right, so it's not too bad, and again, hopefully helpful to you as you review.